Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when a devastating accident stops your intended life dead in its tracks? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is Life-Jacked, the Resilience podcast. Life-Jacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Poetic, raised in a single-parent household with 4 siblings, is a motivational speaker and the author of the inspirational story of Poetic, Chronicles of Adversity, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency, who, after being inspired by someone else, now works to inspire others. Ethan, often called the walking miracle, was a 3-sport athlete throughout high school until his life took a drastic turn and resulted in a near-death experience. He is a graduate of Harrisburg Area Community College with an associate's degree and Millersville University with a bachelor's degree. He received 2 Pennsylvania Commonwealth citations from Senator Scott Martin and Congressman Mike Sturla. Lancaster City Council and Mayor Deneen Sirachi also adopted a proclamation declaration resolution for recognizing Ethan's miraculous recovery as a walking, living miracle. Armed with strength, his mission is to help people overcome challenges just as he did and live the best life possible. You can find out more information about Ethan at www.ethanspeaks.com. Hi, Ethan. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
I'm very good. Honored to be on your show and looking forward to being the best version of myself for this interview.
That is awesome. I know that you will be. Now, you are called the Walking Miracle. Please share with the listeners how this name came about.
It came from a near-fatal car accident. And this is my 13-year anniversary of the Walking Living Miracle, where can you imagine a car accident happening in your neighborhood where you see the fire department, the ambulance, and the cops, and the EMTs? In my car accident, it happened in Paradise, Pennsylvania, when my driver hit an 18-wheeler head-on. I was faced with this mathematical equation, 99% chance of death versus 1% chance of life. Can you imagine people stopping what they're doing to call the cops, fire departments, and EMTs? Can you imagine traffic being backed up 3 miles each way from the east to the west? May you imagine the fire department using the jaws of life to cut the car in half? Can you imagine the EMTs putting their fingers on my neck to see if I have a pulse or blood flow? Can you imagine them putting me on a stretcher with a neck brace and the nearest hospital is 35 minutes away while the police write a police report and do the yellow tape? And then here I am in Langston General Hospital with a very high likelihood that I should have died within 3 minutes of internal bleeding. The surgery takes place, they sedate me or put me in a coma. I wake up 2 times, one in a medicated state on the medicine, then one on a less medicated state. Then there's a woman at this door crying tears of joy. And that's the day I became a walking living miracle, beating that mathematical equation of 99% chance of death, 1% chance of life.
Wow. And so let me ask you, at the moment that right before the accident happened, you were in the car, right? And you're a passenger. Did you see the 18-wheeler come towards you, or just you were kind of in your own world and then bam, you're
I don't remember the car accident. I have no recollection of it. It's like the last time I remember seeing it at a Hess gas station prior to the car accident. Then I remember just waking up in the IC unit. You know, it took like a lot of soul searching for me to like actually look at the newspaper article, the television news, and what really touched my heart was on my Facebook page, all these people saying they're praying for me and hoping for the best. And this is all going down while I'm in the hospital. And it was just like, it was the worst way my life could turn for the worse. But people were still praying for the best. And I honestly don't remember the car accident. It's just something I just remember more pictures that I've seen of from the media, television, and the news people. That's it.
Wow. Now, of course, the doctors worked on you, the nurses worked on you, surgeons worked on you. Yes, as you said, they put you in a coma, you know, to help your body repair. So that was all external, right, who were helping you to recover. But then after all of that is done, now the recovery has to be on you. So now that's internal, right? So what was that recovery like?
A long journey, longer than, you know, a person waiting inside the maternity ward. It involved being in a hospital for about a month, rehab for a month, doing neck exercises, reading, starting all over with the vocabulary words, the numbers, struggling to pick up a bean bag. Then I'm on this feeding tube where I can't eat no more. Then I lost all this weight. I got this left black eye. I'm in a wheelchair. And it was just a sight to be seen that I don't wish it on anybody. The recovery was just more of a marathon, not a sprint. Can you imagine just going from being independent to dependent on other people for your livelihood with no money coming in? And it's just a struggle like no other. But still I had people coming into the hospital, rehab, and at my home praying for me, singing psalms and church songs. Put me on over 30 prayer lists. Just a simple situation of people seeing more and beyond the circumstances. They were like seeing life's coming attraction in their moment of prayer.
So was there someone or something in particular that gave you the strength to push through during this time?
It was a combination of just people, neighbors, certain people through emails and social media.
Well, kudos to you for not giving up and realizing that that was not the end of your story and fighting to have a wonderful recovery. And I agree, you are a walking miracle for sure.
Thank you for the compliment.
Yes, of course. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So you are not planning on college. So how did this decision change?
In school, I was never expected to go to college. I was part of that mathematical equation where I was in learning support classes because I was in a single-parent household. And, you know, when you're in the learning support class, you're seen as a golden goose for the school district to fill in their budget gaps by getting extra federal and state funding. It wasn't until I met Jordan Steffi prior to the car accident where he told me a different way of life, someone who believed in me, not just talk the talk, but show me on campuses and everything. And eventually I ended up signing up for Harrisburg Area Community College sometime after my recovery. I believe it was 2013 or 14. And, you know, it's one thing to see the life coming to track. It's one thing to be on college campuses. That's where people get to be in a different space.
And stepping onto a college campus, what was that feeling like?
I look back at, you know, seeing Temple, Princeton, I believe it was Columbia, then there's Howard University, and many others. It was just a different feeling of seeing different environments on the East Coast, the tour guides. Then we're also doing certain activities of team building. Then there's also just seeing things much different beyond, what I used to see. But I ended up going to a community college because I didn't go to college right after high school. I went to college much later on in life, in my 20s. And that was at Harrisburg Area Community College. And it was much different than going to high school.
So after graduating, not once, twice from college, after that type of accomplishment, what does that feeling invoke within you?
I was just more of a marathon, not a sprint. You have to be responsible. You got to do the work. Nobody's going to read the book to you. You have to be willing to take notes, meet with the professors, the tutors. If you have certain documents from the doctor for learning support or whatever, they give you a private tutor 3 hours per week per subject, which is part of the accommodations due to federal and state laws, since most colleges receive federal and state funding. Across the finish line, I still remember like it was yesterday. The first time I was working at this warehouse up in Ephrata, as soon as I clocked out, I immediately left from Ephrata to the Giant Center in Hershey. I made it about 20 to 25 minutes before the ceremony started. I had my cap, gown, tassel ready, and saw a lot of people I knew there. There was George Veronis, Jordan Steffi, and other people I went to college with, and plenty of the college professors. Then I had my name called, my picture taken. It was very remarkable. It was just a true testament. And when I came to Mills University, it was a different situation of here I'm on this big campus, and all I got to do is just show up, do the work, go to work afterwards. And when I came across the finish line at Mills University, it involved going through COVID. My college classes ended up being online through Zoom, meeting with the math tutors through Zoom, doing a college internship in person. Then when I finally completed all the internship hours, received that credit that I needed to pass for that final math class, it was just simply time to fill out the graduating form. Then it got approved by my advisor. And then I ended up having my first celebration privately due to COVID, December 2020. Then the actual ceremony took place May 2021, where I got featured in the newspaper, television, and all these accolades and awards start coming around.
Now, you, of course, were impacted by a person of influence, right? Somebody influenced you and convinced you to go to college, and now you have this great accomplishment that you have a part of your life, right, that no one can take away from you. What is your biggest belief about the power of influence?
Well, saying the people you be around the most is who you like to become. If you're being involved with the streets, you'll be succumb to the streets. If you be around business owners, homeowners, people who are about making progress in life and maintaining it and thinking about generational wealth, then you're going to be similar to them. In order to be successful in life, you have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone. And that's what I had to do several times over. And when I did graduate twice and get all those accolades, and there was a lot of press, there was a lot of surprise. I overcame a lot of things which some people didn't see coming, but there was some people who did see it coming. But ultimately, I use that influence more for the greater good with students I can see myself in and tell them, hey, you can do it. Here's the programs. Here's the after-school programs I can introduce you to. And you can find out what you want to do at an early age by taking tours of different college campuses, businesses, and other organizations, whether it's for-profit or non-profit.
You know, Ethan, you have an incredible amount of strength and mental strength and definitely resiliency, which is why you are a perfect guest for this show. And you had the strength to push through your recovery. You had the strength to go through college to receive not one, but like I said, 2 degrees. And you mentioned that you had to get tutors and you had to get help. And so there were some adversities at that point. So you still had the strength to push through. Where do you think your strength comes from?
I was always strong-willed by default. Like, growing up, it's just a situation when you grow up in poverty, you either succumb to it or overcome it. Like, I remember seeing my grandma's dresser full of pennies, and she would collect all her loose change and put all the coins on that table, and then put it inside this big jug and take it to the bank. And she told me subconsciously, without telling me, that every money you make counts. Nothing too big or too small. And then I also saw that she was a homeowner. Then I saw my other grandma, who was a single parent before. She still made it work with being a homeowner, making less than. And what I saw was strong women. Then I also saw my coaches who believed in me more than my own biological father. And it's just a matter of, I had to decide at a young age whether I want to be a victim of something or a victor. Then as an adult, it just becomes a matter of just having boundaries for certain people. Because the more successful you become, the more you start to leave the crowd and start to stand out from the crowd.
And so you mentioned that you had strong women in your life. You looked at your grandmothers. You did mention that you had your father. Did you have any other male influence, or outside of the strong women, do you feel like you perhaps wanted more of a male influence, or you desire to have more male influences in your life?
There was a situation where this guy, when I moved to Lancaster, we were neighbors, and we would play basketball together, football. Then one day he came home from work and his wife wasn't at home. A man, feels appreciated when it comes home to a home-cooked meal. I was cooking at my house. I had the windows open. He knocked on the door for a plate of food. I let him come in, ate him a plate of food. It was chicken, white rice, vegetables, a drink. He appreciated it. And, the key to a man's heart is to their stomach. And he just kept asking for more and more. And eventually, I started cooking at his house. And then one day, he told me some words of prophecy of, I am like a son to him. I never heard that from my father before. I heard it from the neighbor. And we ended up developing more like a father-son relationship, where it still happens to this day. His wife approves of it. She's cool with me. I'm cool with her and their children. Not that all of them are adults. I can also thank my coaches for coming into my life, using sports as a guide, showing life skills, showing that you don't have to give in to, feeling sorry for yourself. And I still have relationships with all of my coaches to this day, where I always show up either at their jobs or the weight room or the football field. And we take graduation pictures right there, since they weren't able to make it to Military University's graduation ceremony due to a limited number of tickets. So I always thank them very much.
And so now you are a motivational speaker. How did this come about?
One day, after I made all this recovery and still figuring out life, there's this guy named Andrew Williams, who was a middle schooler at Lancaster Country Day. His teacher wanted to speak about spoken word and poetry, but instead of her doing out of the book, she wanted to bring in somebody who was living it. And that's when I got called in for the interview. The combination of spoken word, poetry workshop. But I want to allow everyone in the classroom to speak their own words of their own experiences in life. And it became a success story, and that's when I realized I could do this full time. But at the time I wasn't professional. I was just more doing it as a hobby. And then in 2021, I became officially a professional keynote speaker, entrepreneur, mental health advocate. And when it comes to me being a self-published author, I became an official self-published author November 2022. And that's where I made headlines.
And you decided to write a book also. It's an autobiography, The Inspirational Story of Ethan, APoetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. So, of course, you're already speaking in front of people as a motivational speaker and sharing your wisdom and experience and thoughts and encouraging people to push through. But now you decided to be vulnerable and tell your story. What made you decide to write your book?
I always wanted to write a book, but the original idea was to do poetry. But life has a way of turning things around. In the spring of 2020, I was at the Verona's house for lunch after passing my college semester. And we're eating, and one person mentioned I should write a book. Then another person said yes. And it was like a city council meeting of I. I'm getting outvoted. And I really wasn't thinking about writing a book on my life because I just wasn't ready to be vulnerable. I wasn't raised to be vulnerable or that open. I was raised to be this tough guy. Not that I'm like being like a guy who lifts weights. And, they kept feeding me lunch, and the key to a man's heart again is to his stomach, and eventually I gave in and said yes. And that's when I got started. I ended up forming my own team, a book cover designer, a couple people with the editing, ordered my barcodes, ISB numbers, copyrighted it. I have 8 forewords, 2 back cover reviews. It was just a journey of writing different phases of life and making things relatable and just going back at it over and over and over again to the point where I thought I was done. I ended up dig deeper and then one day I said, this is enough. It's time to move forward and go to the process. And that's what I did. We're coming up the title, the subtitle, got the professional picture, and the timing just couldn't have been better. I didn't do the whole resale order at the time. It's just timing and finances kind of like played an influence into that. But ultimately, my book has sold tremendously well. I may not be an Amazon bestseller or New York Best Time seller, but I'm impacting people's one life at a time. The book is available as a hardcover, softcover, ebook, and a newly released audio version available on Amazon, Audible, Google Books, Kobo, Spotify, Apple, you name it, it's available. I speak the book myself, beginning, middle, and end.
Amazing. How many people have myths about children that come from single-parent households? What would you say? What would you like to say to people who believe these myths?
Well, it depends on what myths you want to talk about. Like, we have to look at the underlying situation of, there's a reason why it's a single-parent household, and it goes back to the government's agenda, where they're giving 2 different messages during the women's rights movement. They were telling the European people, you can get married, you can go to college, and we'll give you your rights. When it came to those of color, they're saying, well, you can't have a man live with you, but we'll give you these benefits and your rights. And that's what started to push the African-American, or shall I say colored man, out the household, because so many women were taking the bait of government benefits instead of looking at the big picture. Let me talk to my elders. And we look at the world now, there's over 1.5 million households in America that are single-parent households, and people have profited off it, from realtors government agencies. You're keeping the welfare line active. You're keeping people in poverty and creating and choosing disadvantage. And then here comes this entitlement. The myth is that, understand a person's story and understand the backstory and pray for people that need to get out of single-parent households. There are people that did go to colleges that come from a single-parent household. You can look at Michael Orr's story, where his book was called The Blind Side, or the movie was called The Blind Side. He had help from people to help him get into this private school, and he went to a college, graduated, became a millionaire, being drafted in the first round by the Baltimore Ravens. But ultimately, there are advantages and disadvantages of the single-parent household. It's just, by design, it's supposed to be two parents, not one. So eventually, the one parent's going to feel burnt out, and the children are going to be missing out on their other half with a hole. Whether they're living with their father or living with their mom, it's just not the same. But please give people grace and full understanding that not everyone's going to be in a single-parent household forever. Some people may break this cycle. Some people may repeat the cycle. Everyone has a choice.
Absolutely, everyone does have a choice. And you also are a life coach. And so why would someone need a life coach specifically? Like, what can life coaching do for someone?
It can give somebody their undivided attention to what is it that they want to do specifically, what is it they want to overcome mentally, and they get to be around someone that's keeping it 100 with them and hold them accountable to it while being financially invested. Like, for example, let's say somebody wants to overcome like a situation I overcame, which is having a strange relationship with my father. And I had to explain to people that you got to understand that sometimes when you don't see your father due to some people getting pushed away, incarceration, foster care, adoption agency, someone not knowing they had a child, and then unfortunately some people choose abandonment. And the bigger thing is you got to understand the honest truth that you don't have to repeat the cycle. You could do better, but in order to do better, you have to do the opposite. And it starts with renewing your mind and your heart and having conviction to know that you could be a better version of what you saw in a person. And by having a life coach, you get to have someone speak words of encouragement and be with you on the journey and see it through. And ultimately, a life coach is there to give you the tools, but they can't do the work for you. It's similar to being a basketball coach, football coach, a musician, who's the conductor, the producer. You have to do the work on an individual level. And that's where some people don't like the accountability and, of course, stepping outside their comfort zone. And again, in order to grow in life, you got to go from victim to victor. And no one's going to force it on you. You have to want it.
In your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
You have to read books on resiliency, look at videos on resiliency, learn people's stories on resiliency, because most of the things that we face with hardships, adversities, traumas, and scars have already been overcame. Because the earth is already 2,000 years old. There's plenty of stories on people overcoming things. And then there's also stories on people who did not overcome things. Either way, there's a price to pay. Whether it's being in jail or in and out of rehab and costing yourself valuable relationships and fighting your own health and not wanting to be saved versus I got to choose a different crowd of people. I have to stand out from the crowd. I have to work on myself on an individual level, away from the cell phone, the social media. It's time to get to work. It's time to put out a game plan. It's time to be intentional, because no one's going to force you to be resilient. You have to want it from within.
Absolutely. How would you finish this sentence? My life now is.
My life is now being a proud uncle of a newborn nephew and a 17-year-old niece, being looked up to as inspirational in many school districts, social media, and in several communities. Then there's also having my driver's license, being here in good health, and continue to grow because the best is yet to come.
Congratulations on your new nephew. I'm sure that he is a blessing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Ethan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Please take the time to let everyone know how they can get a copy of your autobiography or book you as a life coach or speaker.
The website is ethanspeaks.com. To buy the book off of me for soft and hard, all you gotta do is just email me, trust me with your mailing address, and I accept payments as Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, and from there, once I receive payment, I process and send in the mail and send you a screenshot of the tracking number. Then there's also, my book is also available on Amazon, Audible, Kobo audiobooks, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and all major platforms. I am as seen and recognized on several television stations, newspapers, magazines, newsletters. I was recently recognized at the Pennsylvania State Capitol Complex for the Award of Excellence. I am as seen and recognized on social media. I am as seen and recognized by different organizations. I look forward to speaking in your college, public school, private school, charter, and special panels, conferences, and events. And I do require a security deposit, and I will be offering a contract just to make sure everyone understands this is business, and I am legit. This is my third year as a business owner, and I look forward to impacting people's lives one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. Thank you. And also my social media handle is for Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat, EthanPoetic23. Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, Ethan Poetic, EthanPoetic. Then on Twitter, I am EthanV23. I look forward to hearing from the listeners.
Thank you for that. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. I'll be willing to pray and see beyond your current circumstances. Make sure you have a combination of faith, works, be on a prayer list, or as many prayer lists as you can, and understand you have a purpose with your life.
Well, Ethan, I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you.
You've reached the end of another episode of Life Jacked, the Resilience Podcast. Connect with me at www.lifejackedpodcast.com. Don't forget to sign up to the blog so you won't miss any events or episodes. And every now and then, I'll give away free materials from my guests or from me. Remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.